Services.
Correct.
You'll be housed there, but staffed by the University of Illinois Chicago.
Staffed by the University of Illinois as well as the Autism Program of Illinois.
The Autism, and now is that a non-for-profit organization?
Correct.
Okay.
So we have essentially three entities came together to form the Resource Center. The University, Department of Family Support Services, and the Autism Program of Illinois. And those three entities came together and said, we need to put in something that's going to serve the needs of the Head Start community. Head Start, by federal mandate, has to service a 10% IEP population within their classroom setting. Being that the numbers of those being diagnosed with autism is skyrocketing,
Right.
we're seeing that 10 percentile within those Head Start classrooms also skyrocketing. So we are really meant to be an advocacy, a service, incredible resource for the Head Start community. Certainly we're not turning anybody away.
Sure.
So if you're not a Head Start parent, if you're not a Head Start teacher, you are obviously still more than welcome to come.
So most of your resources are really focused on the early side,
Correct.
you know, 0 to 3.
0 to 5.
0 to 5, right. And obviously that's where you think you could have the biggest bang for your buck.
God willing.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. You mentioned that the diagnoses of autism has sort of skyrocketed. What is the incidence of autism in the American population?
Currently, based on the CDC, we're looking at 1 in 110.
Okay.
And that number is under 1 in 100 when we talk about male specific.
Okay, when you go to male specific, it goes to under 1 in 100.
Yes, I want to say it's 1 in 70, 1 in 75. Don't quote me on that,
Okay.
but it's like that.
And then what was it like before? You said that it's gone up recently. I mean, that the rate of diagnosis has gone up. What was it, maybe 10, 15? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, you know, the clinicians weren't there to make the diagnoses. Suffice it to say, there are probably tens of thousands of adults walking around currently that may fall under the autism spectrum. The resources weren't there, the clinicians weren't there, they just went without a diagnosis their entire life.
Wow.
Now that there's more clinicians around, there's more services around that are able to make those diagnoses, we have a greater influx in those being recognized as having a spectrum disorder.
So you sort of lean towards the position that it's not that the rate has gone up, it's really that we are more
Awareness
aware.
has gone up.
We're aware of the disease. Parents are taught to spot it. And so folks are more aware, they're more likely to be diagnosed than they were maybe
Correct.
10, 15, 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's also, under the spectrum, there's 5 separate diagnoses that one could potentially be given that would put them into that 1 in 110 category. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but that's going to change very, very soon with a new diagnostic statistical manual coming out. We're going to see some great changes in how autism is in fact diagnosed.
So
and those numbers may very well change.
So we'll see more people diagnosed?
I think we'll see less.
You'll see less.
Which is a whole other show.
So is that like the DSM-5, or is that what we're up to now?
Correct.
My mother was a social worker, so she had like the big book in the library.
I'm sure
last
it had
time I
bookmarks on every other chapter.
It did. The DSM-4 was the last one I recall seeing, so DSM-5
So
was
this
good.
will be the 5, yeah, and I believe it's due out in 2013.
Okay.
And there are going to be some critical changes to the autism diagnostics, the way it's, the criteria needed to meet the diagnosis. And there's a lot of people up in arms over it.
Because if you change the diagnosis, then maybe
Some people might not qualify
for services.
For services.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
And I've got to imagine that it's pretty expensive. I mean, like, you know, you mentioned the home care workers, you mentioned the additional materials that are needed at home to stimulate the child, or just keep a child happy and in a good place, navigating the rooms. And
the costs that go along with raising a child with autism, let alone if there are other siblings in the home, is catastrophic.
Wow.
Catastrophic.
Well, I'm really glad that you decided to operate in the 4th Ward at the King Center. I think it's really important that we provide access to information for not just the Head Start providers, but for parents and guardians and aunties and uncles and folks who are involved in the community who want to make a difference and want to help folks get access to the resources.
Absolutely.
Especially, you know, obviously you're probably going to be focused on the African American community, Bronzeville area with the heads. I mean, if we can do anything to shorten that time period of diagnosis from 6 and moving it closer to 3 years, that'll make a huge difference.
Those red flags need to be put on billboards so we can recognize them.
Can you give us just a couple of the red flags that?
Okay, so if your child from 0 to 3 is progressing typically,
Okay.
they're meeting their typical developmental milestones, in around 18 to 24 months, you start to see a decrease in previously learned skills.
Sure.
They're not making eye contact
Right.
with you. They're not googling. They're not gogging. They're not rolling around on the floor anymore.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not telling you your kid has autism, but these are certainly concerns.
Okay.
These are certainly things to look for. If those things start to decrease and then completely go wayside, it's probably a good idea to take a visit to your local physician.
Well, thank you for sharing that information with us, Joshua. Thank you for joining us here on Fourth Ward Headlines. I'm your host, Alderman Will Burns. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.